for them to do that and everything, and it's really good to see you again, Joseph. And you're such an interesting fellow. We were just talking and chatting as we began this program. And the guest, yeah, welcome very much to conversation. I was taken very much with what you were saying. And it's Joseph Carranza, right? Yes. And he's down as an independent investigator or researcher. Right. And he's a very interesting person. It has a lot of interesting takes on the human condition and so forth. And I'm really looking forward to talking to you. And I'm glad you could put it together, Joseph. It's very good to see you again. Welcome very much to conversation.
It's a pleasure to be back with you.
I wonder if we might just pick up on the conversation we were having before the camera actually started rolling. And I know you brought in a copy of the book, The Bilderberger, group, and I know you've had reference to that. And you're very meticulous and you're very thoughtful in your analysis of things. But I wonder if maybe we could go back and share. We were just talking with you, your background. Born and raised a little bit, let's say, education, because I know you're interested, and we were chatting, general semantics. You were just at a conference, worth referencing that. Correct. And also in labor studies. These are things. But could you share your background? Let's take it from the ground up and then get into a conversation about the human condition and information and other matters.
Well, just a little disclaimer before we begin that discussion that the last time I was on the show, we talked about the importance of engaging in autodidactic pursuits and the dangers of putting great importance on things like credentialism and so-called degrees from our so-called mainstream educational institutions.
Right.
Because those things, as we well know, do not always deliver us to wisdom and knowledge.
Okay. I think that's probably true. Being interested in being a lifelong learning and being interested and curious is what is really evolved. And that can be done increasingly in a cybernated world because the information sources are becoming available to one and all.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I always refer to that as formally miseducated.
Formally miseducated.
So some of the people that I know, actually, some of probably the, to use the term generalization, dumbest and most people who are the most recalcitrant to logic and rational thought are people who use the acronym PhD after their names.
You think so, really?
Some of the people that really have an emotional attachment to a certain conceptualization and cannot step outside of their field, perhaps, or whatever you want to call it, to explore other possibilities. And this is referred to, and we talked a little bit about general semantics, it's referred to in the general semantics materials as a hardening of the categories.
Yes, right. No, I understand that very well. That's a big subject area. I mean, that's a big subject, and it's very important and everything. A PhD dissertation or something, you have to specialize. You become. They want you to. You're supposed to be creating something new. That was what it was with the great minds coming out of the academic history of the world and so forth. They would write great papers that had great import and understanding and so forth. But then it got to be, particularly with the computer, and then a great number more people taking PhD degrees and so forth. You had to specialize on something, and people would become so specialized in their own field, and each field you could dedicate a life to, and the number of fields of inquiry become, when you break it down, into various categories of phenomenology or anything, you break it down, it can become so highly specialized that you never take sight of the patterns in which that specialization is nested, and it makes it difficult to do pattern recognition, which is one very important part of human consciousness. The human species in its consciousness is very good at recognizing patterns, and we're for that, and it runs counter to that in a way when you get, as you say, the hardening of the categories and specialization. The FBI won't talk to the CIA or the thing, and the organization of society also is specialized out with bureaucratic walls and things set up, and the market has qualities of that also. So it's a larger metaphor for the world organization. Perhaps, I think. I'm not sure. I got a lot of words in there, but
yeah,
you know.
Well, I think another problem is once you have accumulated these credentials,
Yeah.
they have to be protected, and you don't want to do or say anything that's going to lead to you throwing your career away. So once you are situated in that position that those credentials got you to, then you're kind of limited as to the extent to which you can explore certain things that maybe epistemologically you would seek to explore, but financially that might not be a viable option for you.
That would have ramifications for the political and economic organization of the society too. Specialization. Right.
Right. Like
it's a large subject. General semantics is associated. It's a discipline in and of itself.
Right.
It is.
Absolutely.
And some of the people who would be associated with this way of seeing, this epistemological way of seeing things would be?
Nobody who would really have significant airtime or whose name you would see on a regular and continuing basis in the electronic or print media.
Okay.
Nobody.
Well, what would be some of the names that you'd be familiar with? I heard you mention you were at a conference recently for somebody with a Eastern European name, Kapinski or something.
Alfred Korzybski.
Korzybski.
Right. And the famous books on the subject, General Semantics, you have a book called The Manhood of Humanity, and you have another book called The Science and Sanity. Science and Sanity. So what General Semantics is, basically, it provides it's the adherence of the discipline, the tools and the principles that that can be utilized to better evaluate information and to better communicate with others, and to unravel word magic and fallacy on those occasions when it is used against you, and to really
understand propaganda, maybe?
Oh,
or see through it?
Most definitely.
Advertising, that kind of thing?
Yeah, all that type of stuff. Appeals to the type
emotions,
of appeals to authority and emotional appeals and all that. All the encyclopedia of fallacy that goes along with that.
It might be a large part of what is sometimes called critical thinking, or is that a term that resonates to it?
Yeah, critical thinking, sometimes referred to in the materials as flexible thinking, adaptive thinking, as compared to mechanical, dogmatic, and rigid
rote
thinking.
Yeah. I see. Kapczynski.
Korzybski.
I'm hoping you will after we're going to stay in touch. We've been in touch. We're going to stay in touch. Will send me links to that and so
Absolutely.
forth. And you told me you were at a conference recently that was sponsored by a very interesting institution to me, the Buckminster Fuller Institute, and there were people of that realm. We have a critic of American Social Economic Organization, Noam Chomsky, is famous. We had Hayakawa, is it the fellow in California? Hayakawa was a semanticist, I think.
Yeah.
But there are other people that are associated with this way of thinking, and it generally would nest nicely with people who have a desire for comprehensive thinking or inclusive thinking and pattern recognition rather than the details of the specializations. And I'm not sure who it was who wrote another big fat tome, Mr. Gibbon. And if you go into the library, there's specialization everywhere, and you can be lost in a specialized field without seeing the larger patterns. But who are some of the other people who might be associated with that school?
You mentioned Hayakawa, who
Hayakawa,
wrote
that
a
was
book
in San
called
Francisco.
Language in Thought and Action, and then you had Wendell Johnson, who was a speech pathologist. He wrote a book called People in Quandaries, another one of the important works in the general semantics discipline. But just to maybe make the connection between the general semantics discipline and something that's unfolded since the last time we got together for a conversation.
Okay.
And that was in August 2008. I believe the last time I was on the show was November 2007.
Okay.
So in August 2008,
right.
I was vacationing in Vermont, and I turned on the television set for lack of anything better to do, and I switched to C-SPAN, and they were having a press conference, and there was a gentleman speaking. His name, if I recall correctly, was Shimon Sunder. Shimon Sunder.
Okay.
And he was giving the NIST official explanation for the destruction of World Trade Center Building Number 7, as we well know, was not hit by a plane, was not hit by any significant amount of falling debris from the North Tower, and there were no fires of any significance that would have caused the complete, what they call the global collapse of World Trade Center Number 7.
The implosion,
Well...
Or it looks like a... controlled demolition, but I'm sorry, I don't want to,
Right.
Okay.
So now, he set forth during this press conference that what caused the World Trade Center Number 7 building to collapse was the burning of ordinary office furnishings. Some chairs and some desks and some carpet and a few computers, which they admit in their report. They admit that there were no office furnishings that would have burned at any significant intensity for longer than 20 minutes. So if you ever looked at the beams, like these structural support columns, the structural steel of a building like World Trade Center Number 7, now there were 81 massive steel columns. The official NIST explanation was that ordinary office furnishings caused one critical column, meaning that there was one critical column holding up the whole building, and basically the other 80 columns of the building were apparently there for show. But that the strength of that one column was compromised by the ordinary office furnishings, the burning of ordinary office furnishings within 20 minutes' time, and that caused the entire building to collapse neatly down into
on its own footprint.
Right. So when asked at the conference if they had tested for the presence of thermite or RDX or any of the other residues from the high-tech explosives that might have been used to cause such an event,
as is routinely done in the demolition of buildings.
Right.
It's a profession and an art.
Right. The official statement regarding that was, well, we didn't test for the residues of these things because we ruled out the possibility of controlled demolition.
Okay, that doesn't sound like critical thinking.
Right. So this is where the ability to detect fallacy comes in. Well, if you tested the debris, if you told me that you tested the debris and none of those things were present in the debris, that would have been one thing. And then to reach the conclusion that, we ruled out the possibility of controlled demolition because we tested for the things and those properties or those elements were not present in the debris, so we ruled out the possibility. But no, the possibility of controlled demolition was ruled out in advance of all of that. So that's where the
they said a premise, or they said is it a premise or something?
Well, they started off with a conclusion, and
and then worked back to it. It's like Alice in Wonderland.
Right. If there was anything inconsistent with their conclusion, that was done away with.
And the conclusion was foregone. I mean, it was ahead of time. I mean, they said it ahead of time.
Right.
And then worked back toward the fact.
Like just about anything else the ostensible government investigates into. It's amazing how all these things are on contra, and one thing after another can be investigated into, and no evidence of governmental wrongdoing or malfeasance or incompetence or nothing inappropriate is uncovered in any of these investigations. And usually when things like that happen, that tells you, when you look at the 9/11 event especially, the fact that nobody was prosecuted, nobody was demoted for that.
Well, they've never given the premise a chance to breathe any life into the consciousness, yet the consciousness of a great number of people have gone to there, along with the people that have investigated the whole proposition, and it's now at the point where there is a serious, as I understand, set me straight, you're following it more than I am. I want to ask some more about that, Building 7 particularly. Is that where the headquarters of intelligence headquarters were housed in that number 7? That was for of significance, particularly significance.
The FBI and the CIA were amongst the tenants there, and the apparently some documents connected to various Security Exchange Commission investigations were being stored there. But I think that's second-story argument because it's a very poor reason for why the building might have been destroyed.
No, I was just curious.
Yeah,
but it was something federal. Was it something that who was the mayor then? It was what's his name, Giuliani, and that there was a command center like for having to do with national security and that kind of thing.
So
seemed
I guess
to be housed within that building. If I'm not mistaken.
It seems to be a popular hypothesis within the so-called 9/11 truth movement that that the building was destroyed because we had to hide the evidence. We had. Well, hide the evidence from who? It's like, we talked about that before, about how if something is already in your pay and control, meaning the people who would investigate it are already in your pay and control and committed to the cover-up and the blackout concerning certain information, why would it be necessary to destroy an entire building like that?
Well, that's getting into sort of trying to follow the conclusions of a way of thinking and everything like that. But Building 7 wasn't hit by any airplane or anything. But the thing I'm getting at in a certain sense is there's now, what do you think? And forgive me because I am a comprehensivist. I know a whole lot about a whole lot of things, but I don't know a heck of a lot about a lot of what special people know about something they're very focused on. So forgive me because I'm not very familiar with the 9/11 event or with the 9/11 truth movement or anything. But it seems to me there's a group of people now who had gotten together. I've gotten emails and so forth where they're to have an initiative to have a reopening of the NIST Commission and to have it examined, and that there are great numbers of people across the country who, in surveys and so forth, do not trust the implications or the basic premise put forth by the NIST Commission, which says it is absurd to assume that it was anything other than 19 people with box cutters and a brief against the American system. Is there a thing now that's in the place to the City Council of New York or something that would put it on the ballot or something, or am I off base on that?
I see that.
Or what do you think of it if there is?
Well, what I think of it is I think the ballot initiative, not to, I know I'm going to get a lot of people in that really worked hard and people that maybe have very good intentions, a little upset with me when I say this, but I see that ballot initiative as a completely fruitless endeavor.
Okay.
Do we really expect the instrumentalities of the same entities who brought us the 9/11 event in all its glory to probe into it and uncover and to force admissions from these people? Think about that. Think of the absurdity, and this is another epistemological issue.
Yeah.
Are we really expecting these people to admit to what they've done and to admit that the official pronouncements were absolutely steeped in fraud?
Yeah, and then that would be nested, or it seems to me that would be nested within a larger context of the people who own and run and are the aristos that are responsible for the institutional structure of society and the world to ever be questioned when they're setting the premise in which everybody else has to accept. Are we ever going to be able to question the system writ large? It seems to me, or how would that ever happen, or how could that ever possibly happen? I mean, we do have periods in history, just history of revolution, and one element will be able to claim a change against an order that considers itself an ancient regime with legitimate claim to authority. Mm-hmm. The feudal system in Europe was challenged by the George Washington and that motley crew of terrorists that made a revolution and made a qualitative change or a rend in the society. These things do happen on occasion, no?
Well, it seems to be seems to me that there's a lot of assumptions in there.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
And I don't want to get you upset with
no,
me.
I don't want. You're not going to get. You can't get upset. I can't. You can't. You can say anything you want. You won't get me upset.
Yeah,
because I know we're on the same page in a lot of ways.
Well, yeah. There's been revolutions and there's been all kinds of tumult, but once we start to look at each each instance or each example, we start to see certain trends developing. We start to certain questions begin to come into view about how those things were maybe not what most of the people, even a lot of the people that were intimately involved with them, thought that it was. The American Revolution might be a good example of that. I'm not really sure that the whole thing was really what most of the people probably living and working in this country believe it to be. Yeah.
Well, there's only about a third who were in favor of it. A third were out and out Tories against it and called them terrorists, as George III called George Washington.
Right, and there's some logistical issues as far as where the arms came from and where the gunpowder came from, and it seems to me that that the people that really control ultimately the money power were able to create the situation
at that time,
and then control the outcome of each situation. You know, and then the Bolshevik Revolution was another example.
Yeah.
If you there's a book called The Bolshevik Revolution and Wall Street, or Wall Street and the Bolshevik Revolution by Anthony Sutton, and he gets into how it was all financed by Wall Street, and how is it possible? It's a strange marriage, and he writes about that a little bit in the Bilderberg.
The Bilderberger, of course, is a group. It's called the Illuminati by some. You got the Fundi coming out of feudal Europe with a power structure that runs the world.
Right.
A few people that meet, and they have that, and they do exist. You have the Council on Foreign Relations is seen that way, Trilateral Commission that, but the Bilder Group is a classic example of the people who are all powerful in terms of the institutional structure of the world. I wonder if we could resort to another level then. How about if we could talk about evolution? Are these principles of general semantics relative to the scientific understanding of the evolution of biological systems on planet? Because we know we do have a system that there are qualitative changes occur. It's called punctuated equilibrium, the creation of a new species, new variety and great variety, and it occurs. It isn't, I'm trying to get at it in a general semantic kind of way.
My position
the idea of
regarding
change and transformation, and do we live in a time of qualitative transformation now, perhaps sociologically, politically, and at that level of our normal consideration of the human condition from what we've come out of history, maybe. But just the evolutionary process itself.
I think there are probably almost an equal number of assumptions associated with the so-called theory of evolution as there are with the creationists.
Okay, well, go on.
I mean, any theory or any teaching that starts off with the idea that they are going to tell us how everything came to be, and how, including ourselves, you know, like Lao Tzu, the ancient Chinese philosopher, said it best. He says, "To know that you do not know is the best."
Well, that is like a claim for synergy, and that's appropriate. Right. But we are not in a silent, dumb universe. We do have apparently some capability to take the measure of things and have something called understanding.
Right.
So we're not just a silent universe.
Yeah, there are things that can be known.
Yes, that's right. And that's the semantics is involved with trying to know things. And it's interesting to me, somebody like Buckminster Fuller and other giant thinkers that have come along and brought general, important understanding to events, is involved in this idea that you're involved with. But it gets to the point where we do know that there is a planet Earth and there is a reality that exists. I mean, I'm trying to say, is there no reality? Or I don't quite know where you're going with that thinking.
Well, the general semantist would recognize the questions as unanswerable.
Well, then...
And it would realize, the general semanticist would realize the folly in the argument over whether 100 angels can dance simultaneously upon the point of a needle, or
the head of a pin, I think it was, brother.
or just 50 angels.
Oh yes,
can dance
they used to argue that way in the Middle Ages. Yeah.
So you know, the general semanticist will be able to maybe detect immediately the unanswerable question and the absolutely fruitless argument that after extensive discourse and tossing it around for days on end, will be no closer to, we're no better off for it.
That's an interesting take on things. I think there's a wisdom in that. It's you could assume in this universe, the CERN thing just had a hiccup. You know, the accelerator. It's CERN, where they were going to get. I understand that hiccup. They'll probably get it together, but they were going to bring us a photograph of the shock wave of the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, when this particular universe, which may be part of string theory, says of parallel universes, soap bubble-like kind of parallel universes, but that was a pretty significant ability to take the measure of things within a nanosecond of its occurrence. The most recent that we've been able to achieve is about 220,000 years after the Big Bang. We have a picture of the shock wave coming from the technological extension of our ability to take the measure of things. It's worth something. But even within that context, it would be that there will be, in the ultimate sense, mystery. And that the synergy, we are in a synergistic universe or multi-universes of resonating interrelationship between systems, and that there's something more than the sum of the parts in an evolutionary way. There's something more than the sum of the parts. So ultimately, it is the beginning of wisdom to understand that there is a priori mystery. Does that make any sense in terms of semantic thinking?
Right,
and that's because that's my position.
Right.
Even if we get to a point where we're transcending human consciousness, we come into a new relationship to the universe in the evolutionary process, that will only nest us within a larger pattern of that outer reaching, and that would be a priori mystery, because the resonancy is always more than the sum of the parts.
Right.
It's like coming out of the end of the birth canal, rather than seeing that process from within the birth canal of the evolutionary process.
Right. To start off
if
realizing,
you can follow all that.
To start off realizing that there is going to be inherent limits in that associated with that type of exploration and with the pursuit of this type of knowledge. In general semantics, that's called the principle of uncertainty.
Yeah, well, that would be Heisenberg. Would it be associated with or not? Or in physics, I guess. But uncertainty or synergy. Right. Buckminster Fuller used to use that term. He would talk to an audience of thousands, and he would say, how many people have heard of the word synergy? And no hand would go up among thousands of people. Well, then that's relatively recent. Now it's on the lips of every ad agency because it fits nicely into ads on television.
It's interesting whether the person is speaking about evolution or the person is using the term God. If somebody asks me, and this happens to me pretty frequently.
I suppose, yeah.
If somebody asks me if I believe in God, well, the first thing that I want to know is, what is it specifically that you are referring to by your use of the term God? Like, what is the referent there? And it almost goes like without exception, that the person who I pose that question to is absolutely at a loss to tell me what it is specifically they're referring to. And we see to put that in something that's going on since the last time we got together, the Obama phenomenon.
Okay, that's another thing to talk about. It's quite a change since last we spoke, right?
Well, yes and no.
I bet we didn't know his name in that time when we did that program.
Hardly, yeah.
Or at all. I don't think
kind of an obscure
He would have
figure.
been doing community work in India and Illinois.
Community organizing.
Organizing,
yeah,
or
another
something. Another one of the mass of people doing community organizing, trying to make things better. Yeah.
Right, but with the Obama phenomenon, now you had people walking around, and I've heard them referred to as Obama bots.
Obama bots?
Obama bots.
Yeah, like a robot. Huh?
And this is another thing. I hope I'm going to get a lot of people that I know angry with me, but this is something that I think we should explore.
Okay.
If you stopped and asked them, like I stopped and asked the person that was using the term God, well, what is it specifically that this person has done? I mean, people were comparing him to Jesus Christ and comparing him to John F. Kennedy and comparing him to all these other people in history who accomplished certain things. But the person who was swept up in the Obama phenomenon, if you had stopped them and questioned them, well, what is it specifically that this person has done? Like, what knowledge do you have that would logically lead you to the way that you feel about this person? And also, almost without exception, the person that I posed that question to would be at a loss to tell me what it is about the person that led them to the feelings that they are experiencing about the person.
Interesting, yeah.
Right, and what that tells me is, and if you examine the speeches that Mr. Obama has promulgated, especially in the run-up to the so-called election.
He's a heck of an orator.
Well, yeah. And if you broke it down and you examined it from a what they call neuro-linguistic programming.
Okay, you're involved with that? Okay, there's a name associated
neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah, I know, but is there a name, a person?
It's hypnosis, actually.
No, but is there a person associated? Like psychoanalysis is Freud.
I believe it was Erickson.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken,
okay.
Don't quote me on that. That was
I know there's a lot of people interested in neuro-linguistic programming. I'm not really familiar who it's.
And if you break it down, if you examine the speeches, you are able to recognize, once you have that knowledge, you're able to recognize all of the hypnotic suggestion and the mass hypnosis techniques that are used in the speeches. The pacing and the leading and
well, it's called oratory, you know, or oracles.
But
oration skills.
Well, oration skills, you might have some of those elements scattered about. But once the elements are arranged in a certain way, then there can be no mistaking the oratory style as, you know, for just something haphazard, for something that's not consciously premeditated and pre-organized. You see, there's a few good articles. I could maybe, if someone emails me, I can send them the links to the articles that really break it down in a very beautiful and easy to understand way. Is
it something that would begin to be channeling the personality of Spock in the Star Trek thing, or what? I'm a little. It's very thoughtful and everything. Your overall philosophy and epistemology and everything, and it's very interesting to me and everything. And I know you have very interesting ideas, but I'm just wondering. Like Shakespeare or love or some of these kind of things, emotions, these kind of things that are part of human consciousness, where do they figure in? It seems very logical, the neuro-linguistic programming, or even the, what do you call it, general semantics. It's trying to get a logical way of understanding everything?
Well,
including human behavior?
The effort to understand things is just something that we naturally do.
Okay, is it called? Do you conflate it with rational?
Well, the neuro-linguistic programming and the mass hypnosis techniques is an act of deception. So that's what would distinguish it between.
It's not a way of perceiving deception or of understanding it and controlling it. And not being manipulated by it, or is it?
It's a tool of manipulation.
It is a tool of manipulation, not of perceiving the manipulation as being directed at you. The neuro-linguistic program, is it like EST or something? Or forgive me, I'm not very familiar. Noam Chomsky is a semanticist. Does that figure in to your this pattern or this epistemology?
It's important. It's important to delineate between the term semantics and general semantics. The study of semantics being the study of words and their meanings, whereas general semantics was more the things that we spoke about before, certain principles and certain evaluative tools.
And there was an exponent of this of particular importance with an Eastern European named Kaminsky.
Korzybski.
Korzybski, and he was a figure, a person, who lived and wrote, and people study at.
Actually, he was a man who lived.
I'm not familiar.
Through the period of World War I.
World War I.
World War
He was
I,
European.
and he was Polish, actually, and he was injured in the war, and these experiences made him reflect on the advancements that humans were able to make in the fields of technology, especially weapons technology. And he was really perplexed by the lack of the human ability to achieve these types of advancements in thought, language, and communication, and maintaining good relations. And
that's very, very interesting. I'm glad you called to my attention. I don't know how I could have missed something. It's a general movement and understanding of a great number of people. And you said there was a conference recently studying or celebrating him. He's not with us any longer. He's passed.
No, that's correct.
But he has a literature that remains and so forth. And that there were a great number of people who were a celebration of his memory, including the people from the Buckminster Fuller Institute, and some of the others that were associated with that. Who were some of the others?
Well, there's the New York Society of General Semantics, and there's a thing called the Institute of General Semantics.
Okay.
They conduct a big symposium at Fordham University every year, and this year's symposium kicked off on September 11th.
All right.
But you know, not to say that the general semantics discipline is a panacea.
No. It's an epistemology or something, or a way of seeing the universe.
Right. Because I've been at these events and presented certain ideas that maybe were I thought would be received a certain way, but actually just the opposite happened. Like, for instance, one of the speakers at the symposium was carrying on for about, he was speaking for about 20 minutes on the state of the so-called media and how most of the information that we are saddled with or subjected to in the mainstream media, so-called, is distorted and inaccurate and all the above.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
So I raised my hand during the question and answer period, and I said, well, so then how about the so-called mainstream media's coverage of the events of 9/11?
Okay.
And
you're skeptical about the NIST report.
Well, the whole package, the way the whole explanation was packaged.
There's a lot of people
There's too many elements that possibly be discussed right now. But,
David Ray Griffith and everything.
Right. But the point is that the gentleman, the general semanticist, the professor of media ecology, I believe.
Media ecology.
That's another
now you're
term.
beginning to get to McLuhan,
and
you're getting to some people at Fordham. There's a guy out of Fordham doing that. Now you're getting it to connect it with some names. That's good. For me, thank you. Yeah.
So now
media ecology. Bob Dobbs.
After going on for 20 minutes about the sorry state of the so-called media, he responded to the question by saying, "Oh no, the 9/11 event unfolded exactly the way the media presented it to the public, and anyone who doesn't believe that is crazy, and that's just absurd." And
And where does that leave us? Well, I mean, I don't quite understand.
It left me scratching my head. So I didn't make the connection between those comments and the 20 minutes of dissertation that preceded it.
Okay, I understand. So that's critical thinking again, and there is that. But then you said the group, you didn't quite. There is a group who wants to have an initiative, and they're thinking they got a lot of signatures, and it involves the city council or something, to reopen the investigation, and there's a great deal of support of that across the world. And for some reason, you said this is going to upset them, but haven't I been getting emails, and they're on the verge of reopening it and having the basic NIST of the whole approach that is presented reopened to a more reasonable, critical thinking investigation of what happened on 9/11? And that would be significant, but you seem to think that's not going to happen. No point in doing it because it won't happen, because the people that would have to have any meaning for that are the people who run the world, and they're not going to do anything that's going to call question upon themselves or something.
Right. How could they possibly admit that 9/11 was a psychological operation. It was an attack by the people that really hold power and control,
including
against,
our government institutions,
well,
CIA, FBI.
the term "our government," there's a lot of assumptions there
Yeah,
too.
right, right.
I don't believe that we have a government. To put it in like a microcosm, just look at the example of the first federal agency that was created, the Interstate Commerce Commission. They were going to regulate the railroads, so they appointed one of the most famous constitutional scholars in the country, Thomas McIntyre Cooley. Mr. Cooley was going to preside over this commission, and we were going to regulate the railroads. You know, the railroads were out of control. They were operating monopolies, and we didn't like the way that looked. So we organized this commission.
Yeah, they were getting great tracts of land granted to them to do it, yeah. Right.
So, Mr. Cooley was presented to give the commission and the appearance of legitimacy. But, of course, a few years after he was appointed, he resigned. And before you know it, all of the people that held important positions on the commission were themselves in the pay and control of the railroad company.
Okay, and
so that's a small example of what's happened with the thing you're referring to as the ostensible government, as our government. It's not our government. It has not even the slightest appearance of legitimacy. No person of conscience could possibly be associated with it at this point in history. Once they know certain information, but that information is effectively concealed from the masses. This is called, referred to in certain works as the deliberate dumbing down of America, and it extends to every corner of the society, including the lawyers and the judges.
No, I understand that. That would be a systems challenge to the way the world is operated writ large. That's why the Bilderberger notion and that sort of thing. That's very interesting that that's the case. And the thing about the 9/11, how could they admit to the fact that they may have done that?
Right.
I mean, when I saw Mr. David Ray Griffiths, I went home and read what's his name, Rise and Fall of Third Reich. William Shire. And that fellow, they used it, certainly, the burning of the Reichstag, in order to get power in Germany. And it is something that you could understand, people manipulating. And we do not live in a democracy or anything of that sort. We got fairy tales and things. We have a major movie coming out now with Michael Moore. Do you follow him at all? He's a populist movie maker. He's done movies, but he's got one now that's really getting a lot of support. I mean, within even circles, a whole hour on Larry King, going out over the world and everything. And it's called It's out today, I think. It's opening. It's called Democracy, a Love Story, and it's a broad brush.
Or capitalism.
Or capitalism. I'm sorry, capitalism, a love story, and it's a broad brush attack against capitalism itself. So we've got a system in place. A few people run everything. They used to call it the Ancient regime in Europe. They are legitimate, and they run everything, and it has nothing to do with democracy. The consciousness is manipulated by fears and so forth, PR and advertising and this, and it's run by a few people who own and have control over everything, like the aristos did in Europe in the feudal time. So that's what we're saying. So that's the thing. So if you bring down their assumed legitimacy by investigating 9/11 here in New York City or something, it's going to bring them down. But it wouldn't, because they would still be there. But can you address that, what I'm saying? Are we ever going to get to a situation? That's why I said you might have to go to punctuated equilibrium in evolution. In evolution, you get quantitative change. And James Joyce said history is a nightmare from which I'm attempting to awaken. We have weapons that are species lethal now, didn't have in the Second World War. We have a system that is not anywhere near what the future requires, and it's understood by everybody. It serves a few people. It doesn't serve the masses. It isn't able to allow each person to be liberated within the context of their own being and the ecology. We need a qualitative change they don't have an answer for it within the context of their tunnel vision that they teach in all the universities. So we're up against a real dilemma. But are you optimistic for the human prospect or the evolution of perhaps a new consciousness in the universe that is the mark of this moment in the evolution of consciousness? Or how is your feeling about what is the likelihood? Are you optimistic, pessimistic? Let's just say forget the ecology for a minute or the larger realms beyond the human prospect.
Well, first of all, to put it in a nutshell, what you were speaking about before, the organizers of fraud, right, and the parties who are working a fraud on certain groups tend not to admit to to the fraud.
No.
You know,
they might not even see it
they've
they
derived great benefit from, and they've profited from. They tend not to turn around and just have epiphanies and admit and take remedial actions to correct the the undesirable situations or the things being complained of.
And they that might not be on their part. It might not be anything to do with any they really feel that. They really think they are.
And as far as
they really believe that they are the hope of progress.
Right.
If only they can keep doing what they're thing. It's not like they're lying.
As far as the this
more
transformation that's supposed to take place,
liberation
in the psyche of people,
everybody.
They're supposed to be. I've heard a lot about this. So I would apply one of the general semantics tools to this issue. And I would ask you the question: what is the operation that can be performed to determine either the truthfulness or the falsity of this shift in consciousness that's supposed to take place?
I don't know really. Because I don't know what you can do. It's I don't know. I like Fuller. Buckminster Fuller. He's about as good as you can get, I think, in terms of understanding things. And I cotton on to his getting involved with things political toward the end, with Grunch of Giants and critical path and that. I think is better than just all the design things. They're overly design, all the concern with design and so forth that was characteristic of his early life is a really way to avoid the political questions, which are at the heart of any kind of a qualitative transformation in such a world the way it's organized. But I think I just accept a priori mystery, that there's going to be mystery, but that we're going to come to a point, we do not have a system that the future requires. We're on the verge of, and at the level of capability, the universe has been changed qualitatively by the extension of our own capability. And we're on the verge, I do believe, of like something in evolutionary terms, it would be like we're in the birth canal. And we're coming down to the end of a 9-month pregnancy period that is the gestation for a human thing or for it within an evolutionary. And when you get to that point, you get to a point, there's quantitative change, quantitative. We get a minimum wage. We get, capitalism comes and you get more highways and you get airplanes and you get computers and you get all these quantitative change. And then there's a qualitative change, and that the new condition, it creates a new, it's like almost a speciation. And that would be the result of a liberated humanity where everybody is able to realize their own full potential within a context where everyone is, a liberated context rather than a oppressive one, which is the lot of the vast majority of people now are constrained, and that within an ecological context. We may be at the point of coming to that, but we don't know what it would be. A lot of projections about the way the universe is and the God and so forth is projected, but we don't know that any more than an embryo coming to the end or ready to leave the birth canal can know what that resonating relationship to consciousness is at another level transcendent to human species. Rather like going through the process. Australopithecine was here 4 million years ago, then Homo habilis, then there came Homo sapien. We're coming to the end of that. We're coming to a new relationship, and it is like James Joyce, history is a nightmare. It's gestating, and we're about to leave that and that's the alternative to destroying or stillborning the whole thing which might be in the keeping if we cling to the outdated institutions that have been transformed by the ontological or the new ontological or epistemological reality of technological extension. So it's like you're in the womb, but I think we're at the verge and we're coming very close to the moment where there's going to be a realization of an alternative way of organizing things that's in keeping with that future rather than reifying the outdated institutions that we've inherited out of history.
To me, it seems.
So I can't put a definite thing on it. It's just
right. To me, it seems like a conclusion like that would have to be steeped in some type of understanding of something very close to the totality of the circumstances of our existence and everything acting upon us around us.
I think so.
We are no more than caveman level as far as understanding any of those things. It's like I think it's akin to trying to understand, for instance, the functioning of the human brain. And I've heard it described like this: so that if our brains were so simple that we can understand how they work, we would be so simple that we could not.
Well, that's an interesting conundrum and everything, but we're understanding more. 35 years ago, we didn't know the way the brain, if you talk about the brain, not the mind, you talk about the brain, we didn't know that there were neurotransmitters at the synaptic cleft between the axons that connect the neurons, the 10 to the 10th power neurons that form the human brain. We didn't know. We were ignorant. We've been ignorant of everything, so we've had to have stories that would relate to our emotional need. We had a self-reflective consciousness. We had to have that. We've come up with them and everything, but we're coming very fast. And the changes are coming. They got the genome so much faster because they couldn't project the quantitative or the exponential increasing of computing power. There's all kinds of things coming now. We're coming to a crescendo now in terms of understanding. We're taking the measure of the universe within a nanoseconds of its creation. That's a pretty good measure of being able to take the measure of things with this extended consciousness that wasn't anywhere to be seen before Homo sapien appeared on the scene. We've come along. We're coming to the end of the human's experience, in my conviction. We're coming to a new relationship to the universe, like a new speciation or a resonating, liberated humanity and ecology, if we make it. And don't blow it all up, which is the other side that is there, reifying outdated institutions. If we have the vision, and our leaders don't have the vision that's relevant to the way we're going to organize things economically, politically, socially, culturally, in any kind of way, we're still living in a slave system, and they don't have a system that's going to be, that's required. So we're living in the most exciting time now, and the water's about to break.
Right. Now this is an example of why the general semanticists title their so-called newsletter. It's more like a pamphlet.
Yeah,
actually.
I want to get in touch with it. Yeah, definitely.
They title the newsletter "Etc."
Yeah,
etc. indicates
well, that's
that,
like synergy.
There's always something more that can be said.
Thank you.
There's always something more that can be known.
That's
Your example of the functioning of the mind, they used to think there were 2 neurotransmitters. Now we know that there are hundreds. And there could be thousands.
Yeah, but we didn't know. 40 years ago, we didn't know they existed, brother. Right. Just think about it. Or think 40,000 years ago.
But no matter what level you get to, there'll always be levels
a priori
beyond that.
Mystery.
Right.
It's going to be
There'll
layers.
Always be levels beyond that.
That's right.
So
if we get to a liberated context and we have everybody there would be like an orchestra. Everybody, the timpani and the everybody's playing rather than a few tubas tooting out. They call it the establishment or something like that, playing for their own interest, reifying their own institution. If you get a liberate, that will be a resonancy, like an orchestra. There, everybo's playing liberty and ecology that will interaccommodate us to universe at a level transcendent to what we've been. We're leaving the birth canal. We're coming into that, and it's this time that we are in that time. It couldn't have been any other, but we're in that time now, and it's very disconcerting because, for one thing, we've transcended scarcity in terms of material. That's a big hang-up because we've got the way of organizing society on that. We're reifying all the institutions we inherited out of history that are outdated by what the future requires, which is non-scarcity or abundance for everybody to be able to realize you don't have zero-sum, You don't have to have, for one to gain, another has to lose. All the fighting and the dialectic and everything. The promise of the situation is we can have what they call liberation for everybody to realize their full potential within an ecological context for the first time, and only time that's been the case. So that's the kind of time we live in, and it's really exciting if that is the case. At the same time, so I'd ask you, are you optimistic that we're going to make the transition in universe to a new way of being, realizing it collectively with everybody, or are we going to join entropy and blow the whole thing up, which we have the power to do? And this is the only place we know an anti-entropic function in the universe is upon planet Earth. We've got no evidence of it anywhere else. Probability says it's there, but we are an anti-entropic function that moves across entropy and brings increased conscious pattern of understanding to the evolution of universal consciousness that we're going to join at a higher level than we've been throughout the human experience if we make it. The question is, are we going to make it? Or are we going to blow it up?
I think the potential is there.
For the first time. It's not been there until about 1970 in systems terms. Right. We're at a time of qualitative transformation.
Well, neither was the technology there for the human race to proliferate to the point that we currently are experiencing now.
Well, we've been here 200,000 years. Come out of Africa, wandering around, running away from beasts most of the time, and now we've come to a point a point that has meaning in terms of our place in the universe. It's never been a more exciting time and a challenging time.
I think a big question is...
we only got about 30 seconds left.
The potential for that does exist. It's doesn't seem arguable. Yes, the potential is there. But there are forces at work that would see that this idea of abundance and this higher state of
they have to be included.
Well, yeah, but they don't want to be included.
No.
They want
stop that. You have to. It's no good if they're not included. It's got to be something that will be able to be understood by the Illuminati, the dark forces of the outrated way. They are going to have to understand it. It has to be bipartisan, liberated, and the oppressors. They have to all include it. You have to include everybody, or it's not worth a candle.
Well, that's the trick.
That's the trick, all right, and that's the thing you're doing. And really nice talking to you. I don't know, we've been running this, I don't know if it seems to me like we might have run over time. But anyway, didn't mean to drag on and everything, but thanks a lot for coming, and it's good to see you. And we got talking. I want to be in touch with you for sure.
Absolutely.
And get some of the links to that general semantics and that kind of thing. It's a really interesting
Thanks
thing.
for having me back on, and it's always a pleasure to see you.
All right. Well, they're running the credits, so let's give it until they go to black. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the ultimate challenge, is to have a position that presents something within television communications that's so comprehensively appropriate to be liberating of the people within an ecology, but the challenge is it'll be understood by and gone along with those responsible for the outdated institutions, and everybody's included in a way on their own terms. That's possible if we give it some thought. And that's what the challenge is before us, I think. And I can't imagine any time more interesting to be living.
I agree.
It's really